We got to get a little louder there. Okay. If you are able to, please rise for the presentation of the colors, the historic Dunbar Senior High School ROTC will enter the room. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We are honored to have Dr. Barbara Williams Skinner here with us today. Dr. Barbara Williams Skinner is the former executive director of the Congressional Black Caucus, president of the Skinner Leadership Institute, co-convener of the National African American Clergy Association, and an author of a new book entitled, I Prayed, Now What? Please welcome Dr. Williams Skinner.
So let's settle our hearts and minds for just a few moments and pray. O Lord our God, whose ways are perfect and whose thoughts are beyond earthly comprehension, we pause now to acknowledge your incomparable sovereignty over heaven and earth, your matchless power, and your exceedingly great love for all your children. As diverse leaders gather in the Democratic National Committee's midwinter meeting to consider how the party can best reflect the best of all Americans, an unsettling question asked centuries ago by the psalmist looms heavily over this body. The question is, if the foundations of law and order have collapsed, what can the righteous do? What can the righteous do? For surely, Lord, trafficking and systemic racism, anti-Semitism, Muslim banning, caging brown babies, racial characters, and other acts of hatred, discrimination, and violence against any citizen is an attack on the image of God in all your children, an assault on the rule of law so vital to our democracy. And certainly, oh God, the building of walls rooted in fear and unrestrained abuses of power weaken the very foundations of the nation you have richly blessed and continually protected. Move on all of us in leadership today, loving God, from pointing fingers, rendering judgment, and exacting criticism of other parties and leaders, to pointing the way to a more just America. Help us all instead to earnestly search our own hearts, spirits, souls, and minds, that we would demand this day a zero tolerance of any hint of bigotry, chauvinism, and bias within our own ranks. May we, during African American History Month, celebrate the best and not the worst of our nation's history. And now, O Lord, inspire this great assembly today to finally create a big tent party large enough for those of us with diverse views on tough issues like marriage, abortion, and income inequality, and others, that you might powerfully unite us, that we might see a day when justice truly runs down like water and righteousness as an ever-flowing stream. We pray this prayer in the matchless, magnificent, and mighty name of the Lord God omnipotent, who reigns now and forever. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you. God bless you. Do we have the video?
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty.
Tick. Let the right hand move forward. Tick. Let it define us. Tick. Let it explain us. Tick. Let it show our strength. Tick-tock about the fact that we birth traits that make humans so resilient. Tick-tock about how there are slices of atoms that are bigger than our fears. Tick-tock about how for centuries we lived in dark times, but all it did was help us find the light. Tick. Let the right hand move forward. Let it show how they can't bring us down or back, only forward. Inside, we are brighter than stars. Look up into the sky and they realize that's where we are. Talk about how we were seen as entertainment, but as time passed, tick, we stuck our hand out of the magic box and said, voila. And y'all were awed by our ability to grab fear and say, kick rocks. We told them they would see us for who we are and fought daily to open their blinds. Some people try to define us, undermine us, under the line, but for us, that is something we refuse to mime. Instead, we reclaim our time, led by black women who get the clouds out of their eyes because their dreams are stuck in the sky. So don't try and stop us just because we are in our prime. Don't try to throw shade just to deprive us of our shine. Don't make us wait too long in line just to fill us with lies. You know what that's called? Disenfranchisement. Meant to keep us silent, but we'll give them the anecdote that our ancestors spoke. We will show our strength through our voices and through our votes. We show ourselves proudly, even though they wanted to doubt us. From Selma to Stonewall, good trouble has led the way. We are dreamers. We are achievers. We tick clockwise every day. Progress is our grace and your shock. Tick, we ain't falling off in a minute. Tick, the power to change the world is ours. Tick, talk about the past because the future doesn't exist without it. Time's up. But we won't stop. Let the right hand move forward. Tick, tock.
All right. Wow. Very powerful video to start off our afternoon together. And those of us who had the privilege of going to our prayer breakfast this morning, we were inspired. I want to thank my good friend Virgie Rollins for organizing a magnificent event. Where's Miss Virgie? Thank you, Miss Virgie. Dr. Frederick Douglass Hines, senior pastor in the Friendship West Baptist Church, was lighting up the room. Like Stacey Abrams yesterday, he came in with no notes, no teleprompter, and he spoke from the heart and inspired us all during this remarkable celebration of Black History Month. And I am excited right now as we move forward to introduce our first speaker. the remarkable mayor of what will be the 51st state of the United States, the District of Columbia. Mayor Bowser won a second term. She continues to work to ensure opportunity for everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, my friend, Mayor Muriel Bowser.
Good morning, everybody. Well, good morning, Democrats. I am so happy to see all of you here. I am happy to be together as a party to talk about the work ahead of us, and I'm thrilled that you're meeting in my hometown. I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your focus and energy and making this meeting a very productive one and getting us on the pathway to a huge victory in 2020. We've heard the president call his presidency historic, and we in Washington, D.C. know that he was right in one respect. He presided over the longest federal government shutdown in our nation's history. More than 140,000 people in the D.C. region were directly impacted and saw firsthand how cruel and unnecessary the shutdown was. Throughout those 35 days, we were grateful to the many Democrats who were committed to getting the federal government back to work and federal employees doing the essential jobs that we need them for. And during those 35 days, we learned an essential lesson about our own city, that we're well-governed, that we stepped up when the federal government wouldn't and stood in the breach. We ensured that we stocked food banks because we saw our own employees in the federal government standing in lines because they had become unnecessarily food insecure. We stepped up and cleaned up after the National Park Service because our nation's museums and monuments were being overrun with trash. And we rallied to support each other, even ensuring that D.C. residents could get marriage licenses and get married during the federal government shutdown. And our local heroes like Chef Jose Andres was there for us, responding to a man-made disaster. And speaking of historic, our own Stacey Abrams provided an historic, in my view, response to the State of the Union. And in these United States, when times are tough, she said, we can persevere because our friends will come for us. And that's exactly what we've seen. While we in the nation's capital have been kind of in the belly of the beast during these last 2 years, our residents have stood shoulder to shoulder, representing our D.C. values and speaking up and stepping up and protecting each other. We are so grateful to the party because when we went to the convention last time, our party stepped up for us too and included the D.C. statehood plank in our platform. And that represented for us really sticking up and stepping up with us. The 700,000 people in Washington, D.C. Pay taxes like every American. In fact, more than 22 states and more per capita than any. We give more to the federal government than we get back. And this year, our Congresswoman put forward a new resolution for statehood in the House of Representatives. And right now, it has more sponsors than it has ever had. And we know that this is the year that the House will move for statehood for Washington, D.C. And for all Democrats, it makes a huge difference. And we want to thank the party. We're going to work hand in hand with you. We're going to work in our neighboring jurisdictions to make sure we're bringing Democrats out to vote and electing Democrats. And while you are here, while we're doing the important work of the party, of course, I hope you also see our town. Go out and visit our nation's monuments and museums, our restaurants, and our people. Thank you very much, Democrats.
All right. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you being here. Let me turn to the secretary for the determination of a quorum.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, Democrats. Many of us have traveled far and long distances escaping brutal snowstorms to come to balmy Washington, D.C. But I am proud to report, Mr. Chair, that we do indeed have a quorum of members present today.
Excellent. All right. Let me now go right to some of the reports of the various committees. The first committee is the Credentials Committee, and I will turn to co-chairs Karen Carter-Peterson and our distinguished chair from New Jersey, John Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good afternoon.
Pursuant to the DNC charter and bylaws, our committee is responsible for resolutions, challenges to the credentials of the DNC members. Sometimes we have issues that need to be resolved, and our party provides for a process to address these concerns in an open, fair, and transparent manner. The Credentials Committee takes these charges very, very seriously to ensure thoughtful consideration of these challenges. Chairwoman Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At our meeting on Thursday, we addressed two challenges that we received to the election of the chair and the vice chair of Alabama. The challenges alleged that there were irregularities in the voting procedures that were used to conduct the August 11, 2018 election. These irregularities included, but were not limited to, decisions with their meeting notice, insufficient safeguards on ensuring only credentialed persons could vote, and inappropriate methods of voting. The challenges also raised issues with how the state party conducts affirmative action outreach to include proper representation from core constituencies. Given the wide array of evidence and testimony to sort through, the committee brought in a skilled third-party hearing officer to assist the committee in this work. Our hearing officer, Michael Lewis, held a hearing prior to this DNC meeting, which was this past Monday, where all the parties could present their arguments and evidence. He then presented to our Credentials Committee a report laying out the challenged items and his findings. This was of immense help to our committee in our deliberations. After hearing all sides, the Credentials Committee voted unanimously to side in favor of the challengers and have required the Alabama State Democratic Party to hold new chair and vice chair elections within the next 90 days. The committee also asked the state party to undertake a thorough review of their party bylaws, which should then be reviewed by the DNC's Rules and Bylaws Committee for compliance with the National Charter, DNC Charter and Bylaws, prior to the new chair and vice chair elections. The DNC has agreed to provide the necessary assistance to the Alabama Democratic Party in this regard in this process. Mr. Chairman, this concludes our report. We ask that the committee support our report and work and adopt the report. And with that, I make a motion to adopt the report of the Credentials Committee. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any objection? Hearing none, the report is adopted. Thank you.
Thank you to the committee for your very diligent work, and we will move forward there. Next, I will turn to the Resolutions Committee for their committee report, and the co-chairs of the Resolutions Committee. Where are they? Oh, there they are, Lottie Shackelford and our good friend Stuart Applebaum.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and officers of the Democratic National Committee, and you, the membership, and all of our great Democrats. I'm Lottie Shackelford, and along with my co-chair, Stuart Applebaum, we are so pleased and honored to serve as co-chairs of the Resolutions Committee and are here to give the committee's report. The Resolution Committee was called to order on Thursday, February 14th at 1:48 p.m. to consider 41 resolutions, which included 21 message resolutions and 20 commemorative resolutions.
Good morning, everybody. Like Lottie, I'm also honored to serve as a co-chair of the committee, and I am particularly honored to be serving with Lottie Shackelford. Among the resolutions that were considered by the committee were a resolution to celebrate Democrats retaking the House and Nancy Pelosi returning to the speakership. A resolution to condemn President Trump for causing the longest government shutdown in American history, hurting working families and damaging our economy. A resolution encouraging all contenders for the 2020 presidential nomination to run positive, substantive campaigns focused on the issues that matter most to working families. A resolution in support of a complete investigation of the 2018 general election of the 9th Congressional District by the North Carolina State Board of Elections. A resolution honoring the life and career of Greg Pettis. A resolution honoring the life and career of Carolyn Warner. A resolution honoring the life and career of Carol Willis. A resolution honoring the life and career of Meredith Wood Smith. In addition to the resolutions considered by the Resolutions Committee, the Executive Committee adopted resolutions honoring the lives of John Dingell, Edwin Hill, and my dear friend, Babs Sipperstein.
Subsequent to the conclusion of our meeting, the authors of Resolution 21 and 22 have been working together to a position that both parties can support and the role that corporate PAC money plays in party fundraising. They have agreed that the best path forward is to refer this matter to the Platform Committee of the convention so that this important issue will be discussed as part of the platform process and ultimately voted on by the full convention. The committee has been polled. There were no objections to the path forward. So, Resolution 21 has been withdrawn, and we will refer this topic to the 2020 Platform Committee.
Lottie and I wholeheartedly support this solution and appreciate the hard work of the parties to reach this compromise. Mr. Chair, I move to adopt these resolutions as recommended by the committee.
So moved. Second? All right, second. Excellent. All in favor? Opposed? No. Ayes have it. Let's move. Okay.
The midterm elections ended with a series of historic political firsts. A record number of women and minorities won in closely watched races across the country. New York City voters elected the youngest woman ever to Congress. Texas will send its first two Latinas to serve in the House. And voters in Colorado elected the nation's first openly gay governor.
The beginning of a new Democratic Party, younger, browner, more women, more veterans, can win in Michigan, can win in Pennsylvania, can win in Ohio.
A record number of women, more than 100, elected to Congress. In the House, at least 30 women elected for the first time, and more than a dozen of them flipping seats from red to blue.
A blue wave did hit the state of Nevada. Jackie Rosen defeating the incumbent Dean Heller for the United States Senate. And now that means that both U.S. Senate seats in the state of Nevada are held by women.
And Holland's win tonight is historic for New Mexico. It makes her the first Native American woman to represent our state in Congress and among the first in the country.
2018 also saw the first Muslim women elected to serve in the House. Democrats Rashida Tlaib of Michigan and Ilhan Omar of Minnesota.
Former MMA fighter Davids was among a record number of LGBTQ candidates.
For the first time in nearly a decade, Wisconsin will have a new governor. Democrat Tony Evers has defeated Governor Scott Walker.
Evers' running mate Mandela Barnes will become the first African-American lieutenant governor in the state's history.
Democrat Steve Sisolak easily beat out the Republican. That means for the first time in 20 years, there will be a Democrat in the governor's mansion in Carson City.
I mean, we turned out more voters than ever before, and we've got to keep working at it. The number of races that we won in areas like Oklahoma, Kansas, and elsewhere, what it shows is our investments in a 50-state strategy are working. We can win everywhere as long as we are speaking to the issues that people care about.
More women are voting for Democrats. More millennials are voting for Democrats. We're expanding our base. We're expanding the map. And we're also expanding our bench for the future.
If you take a photograph, a family photograph of the Democratic Party today, included the winners of last night's congressional seats, many of them women, that's the photograph of America today. And that's a much more encouraging photograph to look at if you're a Democrat.
All right. We are just getting started, my friends, and we've got a long way to go, and we're going to get there. Good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor to be here with you. That video, I want to start out by thanking all the women across America who stepped up on January the 21st, 2017. They said, this is not just a moment, this is a movement. And we know now that we have a movement moment. 100 years after getting the right to vote, we have the largest female representation in the history of the House of Representatives, thanks to the Democrats. And we have at the helm of that House a person who will go down, in my humble opinion, as the most impactful speaker in the history of the United States House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi. And a former DNC member, I might add. Thank you, Speaker Pelosi. You know what, folks? I start with Speaker Pelosi because yesterday, you may recall, we opened up our session with a moment of silence marking the anniversary of the tragic and all too preventable shooting in Parkland. And now, as you know, there was another shooting in a town called Aurora. Not Aurora, Colorado, scene of a different shooting. Aurora, Illinois, scene of another shooting that took the lives of 5 Americans and injured 6 others, 5 of whom were law enforcement officers. And I'm confident that there are Republicans out there saying our thoughts and prayers are with them. But I'll tell you, under the leadership of Speaker Nancy Pelosi and our new member of Congress, Lucy McBath, we're not doing just thoughts and prayers, we're taking action. And earlier this week, in the Judiciary Committee of the United States House, they were marking up a bill to address gun violence, the gun violence national emergency. That's what they were doing. Thank you, Speaker Pelosi. Thank you, Congresswoman McBath. Thank you to all the House members stepping up on this critically important issue. And thank you, everybody in this room, for stepping up at a moment in time when our democracy is on fire. This was a historic 2017 and 2018 election cycle. I also know that there are some new folks here today because with elections often come transitions to new leadership, not only in the United States House, where we have not only a member of the U.S. House leadership, but also a DNC member in the room, Barbara Lee from the great state of California. Congresswoman Lee, can you stand up? Thank you for what you're doing. We are getting woke because of you. And I'd also like to invite our new chairs and vice chairs. We've had some transition in a number of states. I'd love to have any new chair or vice chair stand up so that we could give you a warm welcome from the DNC family. Where's my... Thank you so much. We have a new chair and vice chair from my home state of Maryland. Welcome. We're glad to have you. Welcome to the family. We got a lot of work to do, my friends. Can we also give it up for Unite Local 25? They kept this place going. They are continuing to do great work. The labor movement, as I say often, they brought us the weekend. They brought us the middle class. They brought us prosperity. They take grief in states and courts around this country, and they keep fighting back and fighting back and fighting back because that's in their DNA. We have the largest number of members from the labor movement ever on the DNC right now because I believe in the labor movement. Ted Kennedy taught me, how do you spell success? U-N-I-O-N. That's how he spelled it. That's how I spell it, and that's how Democrats spell it. I'll tell you, folks, let me just read you a few headlines from that cycle, 2018, NPR. It was a big blue wave. Democrats pick up most House seats in a generation. NBC, Democrats smash Watergate record for House popular vote in the midterms. CNN, most Americans will have Democratic governors after the 2018 midterms. In California, I remember reading a headline from Southern California out of Orange County. Orange is the new blue. Washington Post, for Democrats, a midterm election that keeps on giving. Now, the reason I ended with that last one is I have a small problem with it. And here it is. Democrats weren't given anything. We fought for it. We organized for it. We invested early. We invested everywhere. We fielded spectacular candidates. And we fielded spectacular candidates for re-election, like Barbara Lee and so many others. And we all did this together. We weren't bowling alone. We were an ecosystem, working together, every oar in the water, rowing in synchrony. You know, think about this for a moment. The last time we got together as a group in Chicago, there's a guy named Scott Walker was still the governor. Today we have Tony Evers as governor in Wisconsin. And you know who was the governor in Michigan? He ain't there anymore because we have Gretchen Whitmer. We have a governor who is a Democrat in Kansas. As I said yesterday, what's the matter with Kansas? Not a damn thing. They're electing Democrats. That's what we're doing, not only in the governor's residence, but in Congress. And New Mexico, and Illinois, and Nevada, and the great state of Maine. That's what we're doing, folks. Last time we got together, the Republicans controlled the House. They controlled all too many state houses. But because of you, because of Democrats across this country, there are many, many more powerful voices here in Washington and elsewhere to call out this president for his temper tantrums, like the one he is throwing now with his manufactured border crisis and gross abuse of power. The last time we gathered, it seemed like he was implementing his policies with abandon. Now we watch Speaker Pelosi and Leader Schumer control him in Congress. That's progress, folks. You know the old movement song of the civil rights movement, we fall down, but we get up. We fell down in 2016, but we got up. We got up with purpose. We got up with conviction, and we got up and we won. Not only taking back the House, 8 state houses flipped. If Joe Biden were here, he'd say that's a BFD. You know, we win something like 41 seats in 10 state houses in the coming cycle. We flipped those state houses. Almost 400 seats flipped. That's real money, folks. This is about redistricting, making a difference, having control. These numbers are indeed historic. We know the importance of secretaries of state and attorneys general, and we worked hard to elect more of them. The majority of attorneys general in this country are now Democrats. And this president will find out again when a lawsuit is filed by some of them involving what he did yesterday, and then left to go golfing, I might add. We elected the first Muslim and Native American women to Congress, the youngest women member of Congress. Again, remarkable progress, the first 2 African American women from New England. And we lifted to victory in Colorado, the first openly gay man in American history. Again, that's a big deal, folks, and it didn't happen overnight. It happened because we were intentional. When we got here, we said we must get back to our 57-state model. We must understand that the old accordion model, where we were just here to elect the president every 4 years, was not a model of success. That was a model of failure, and we endured way too much failure, preventable failure. Well, the new DNC, there's no such thing as an off year, as you saw. We were so proud to make unprecedented investments in our midterm elections in this cycle. And you heard from our colleague Elaine Kamarck yesterday, those investments made a difference. And we were able to get out there. Our goal was to rebuild our infrastructure and rebuild trust, and we did just that. We were able to raise record amounts of money during this cycle, over $100 million in grassroots fundraising, with an average donation of $37. We haven't done that before. 47% of online donors in this last cycle gave for the first time. That is remarkable. Our large dollar fundraising was the best it's ever been. People stepped up. Whether it was with $10 or $10,000, they stepped up big time because they understood that we were in a moral crisis, that we were in the fork in the road and we needed help. So we're halfway up the mountaintop, and as someone who moved to D.C. from Colorado, I understand that the second half of the climb is harder than the first half. So we have to understand that while we've had success, we have much more work to do. Last year was indeed the most important election of our lifetime at a midterm level, and now we are moving into the most important election of our lifetime for president, because he will be a one-term president. That is a fact. That is an economic imperative. That is a national security imperative. And frankly, folks, it's a moral imperative. It's a moral imperative around the world, because we know we must make sure we defeat this president. And in order to do that, we have been taking steps. We took steps last August to make sure we're continuing to earn the trust of voters and return power to the grassroots. And we're continuing our efforts now. Our primary election process has begun. We will have multiple candidates in the field, double-digit candidates without a doubt. I welcome that. They are all spectacular people. Their values are our values. We're not going to be talking about hand size. We're going to be talking about health care in this debate process. That's what we're going to be doing, folks. And what we are doing at the DNC is making sure that we have a primary process that is fair and even-handed to everyone. If we have 15 people running, 14 aren't going to make it to the mountaintop. And we need to make sure that every single one of their supporters and the candidates feels like they got a fair shake. And what we also have to do is make sure that we're investing in our infrastructure, making sure that every single person is touched, making sure we have an organizing infrastructure in place. And we do it now, not 18 months from now. Making sure we have a voter protection infrastructure in place. You heard the imperative from Stacy. We know that cheating is a permanent part of their playbook. And they will continue to cheat. They will continue to enlist foreign agents and deny it. They will continue to try to suppress the vote. So we must build that infrastructure. We must build a millennial engagement infrastructure. It was remarkable that young people turnout went up by over 50%. That's the good news. The challenge that remains is roughly 2 in 3 young people sat home in this 2018 cycle. They are our voters. We must reach out. We must build those relationships. And we can build those relationships. I am so appreciative of my friend and colleague, Ken Martin, and everybody in our state parties. We came together understanding that we are at our best when we're together. We have already ratified our state party partnership for 2019 and 2020, continuing our unprecedented investments in state parties so that we can build that infrastructure for success. We know that it's not only about the 2020 election for president, but it's about the 2019 election for state Supreme Court in Wisconsin. It's about the 2019 election for governor in Louisiana, where we will re-elect John Bel Edwards, where we will elect governors in Mississippi. We will elect governor, a Democrat, in Kentucky. People sometimes look at me and say, Tom, you can't do that. And my response to them is, you told us we couldn't do it in Alabama, and we did it. You told us we couldn't elect Democrats in Oklahoma, and we did it. We did it in South Carolina. We did it across this country, Kansas and elsewhere. We can win everywhere. That's the lesson of this most recent cycle, when we organize everywhere and we field great candidates everywhere, and we give them a data infrastructure that enables them to succeed and understand the voter with clarity. And that is why, again, what we have done in the last week to solidify our commitment to state-of-the-art data infrastructure is game-changing. When we empower presidential candidates and candidates for school board and everyone in between with the modern tools of data and analytics, and when we create opportunities to ensure that the learning that takes place across the ecosystem by the various organizations that knock on doors and gather information, that there's an opportunity for sharing, that's the definition of synergy. And that is why it is so important. And that is why I firmly believe that with the agreements that we have made and the investments we continue to make, we are moving closer and closer every single day to winning the White House. The work we do this year will determine in no small measure whether we win next year. And we're working our tails off, we're working together, and we're working effectively. Thanks to everybody involved in that. This is indeed a very, very important part of our process. And thank you, man, I agree with you. And folks, we announced earlier this week our primary debate schedule. It's unprecedented. NBC, MSNBC, Telemundo, live stream. As I said earlier, if you watch your TV or anything on your gadget, or if you still got rabbit ears and no cable, or if you're addicted to cable, doesn't matter. You have a way to watch. Our goals are simple. We want to maximize eyeballs, because the more people that watch our candidates, the more convinced I am they'll vote for our candidates. The more people that understand our values, the more people that will vote Democratic. We want to make sure that we give this forum for Democrats to tell their story, to give their vision. And we wanted to make sure that we provided entry points to the debate stage that weren't simply polling. And our emphasis on grassroots fundraising. We coordinated, we consulted with Act Blue, who is basically the hub of the progressive small dollar ecosystem. And we used a 1971 law passed by Congress as a framework, the public campaign finance laws. And we modernized that. And we came up with a formula for getting onto the debate stage that isn't a layup for anybody, but it's not a full court shot. It's a viable pathway, but a pathway that requires you to show that you're running a nationwide grassroots campaign. That's how we won in 2008, and that's how we will win in 2020. And we're working hard at the DNC to make sure that we live up to our duty to be Switzerland. Our duty to make sure that we exercise impartiality and even-handedness. That is the official charter of the DNC. And I cannot tell you how seriously I take this responsibility. Whoever wins the nomination will have the full support of our party and our infrastructure and access to every tool here. And that process will be the result of a process that was, in fact, fair to everybody. That's why we've established new guidelines for the way in which the DNC, our officers, employees engage and interact with candidates. No DNC officer or staffer will be permitted to endorse a candidate for president during the primary. And throughout the primary, we'll be lifting up all of our candidates' voices to show why the choice is clear. One party's fighting for the American people, the other party's golfing. Pretty simple. Folks, I want to make sure that we continue our momentum. I want to make sure that everything we do exudes fairness, exudes inclusion. That's what we've done. That's why we have been able to score these record victories. Everybody's working together. And if the last 2 years have taught us anything, it's this. Elections matter. Candidates matter. Issues matter. Organizing matters. I've said to you more than once, someone asked me, what do you miss most about your old job? I miss helping people at scale. When you got the right people in the right places, good things can happen. When you got the wrong people in the wrong places, bad things happen. A lot of bad things are happening right now. Some you're aware of, and frankly, all too many you're unaware of. Because that's what happens when you control the levers of power, not only here in Washington, but in state houses and local governments across the nation. Donald Trump declared a national emergency earlier this week, but you know what? It's just, you know where there's a national emergency? There's a national emergency of gun violence. There's a national emergency in health care. If you can't afford your insulin, that's a family emergency, a community emergency, and a national emergency. We have a national emergency on climate. We have a national emergency of voter suppression. We have a national emergency for women who work a fair day's wage and don't get a fair day's pay. Folks, 400 years after the arrival of slavery, we still have a national emergency where the President of the United States, after Charlottesville, can't call racism racism. We have a national emergency. Those are the emergencies we should be dealing with. America has 5% of the world's population and 25% of the prison population. That's a national emergency. Too many Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. That's a national emergency. Americans are carrying $1.5 trillion of student debt. That's a national emergency. And frankly, I really believe we have an acute national emergency when it comes to our values. I don't understand how compassion became a four-letter word. I don't understand how immigrants became a four-letter word. I don't understand how inclusion became a four-letter word. How Muslim became a four-letter word again. How LGBTQ became a four-letter word to this president. This is a national emergency of our moral values. That's why this is the most important election of our lifetime. This is a moral reckoning as much as anything. My faith teaches me, as I said yesterday, that which we do unto the least of us, we do unto us. And it's not simply my faith tradition that teaches me, it's every faith tradition, and those who do not come at it from a faith tradition. It's what we call a universal value. But it's a universal value that's on the chopping block. It's why you're sitting here on a Saturday and a Friday and a Thursday. It's why you've got some people who are in session in their state legislatures who took time out to come here to participate at your own expense, because our democracy is indeed on fire. And it continues to be a five-alarm blaze. And folks, we can put it out. But we can put it out when we recognize, again, that we must never conflate unity and unanimity. I'm never asking you to agree with everything that I say or everything that's in my platform or the Democratic Party platform. But when we recognize, as Speaker Pelosi so deftly does, and so many others as well, Leader Schumer, that what unites us far outweighs what our differences are. And what our differences are, as it relates to the Republicans, are 100%. We believe that climate change is real. We're debating how to deal with it. They don't believe it's real. We believe that health care is a right for all and not a privilege for a few. Thanks to President Obama, thanks to Democrats who fought for Medicare and Medicaid, we got to 90%. And parenthetically, when we were debating Medicare and Medicaid, do you know a guy named Ronald Reagan? He put out an album. And this is what the album said. Medicare will lead, these are quotes, not paraphrase. Medicare will lead to socialized medicine. Second sentence, this is Medicare will lead to socialism in America. That's what he said. Folks, we believe in the capitalist system. We need a moral capitalism that recognizes that shared prosperity is our North Star. And we are having a discussion. How do we get from 90% to 100%? That's the discussion we're having. And the discussion the other side is having is, how do we make it harder for people with pre-existing conditions to get access to health care? Our universal values are our greatest strength. Our unity of purpose brought us historic success in 2017, in 2018, and it will continue to bring it in 2019 and 2020. As long as we remember we are at our best when we're together. As long as we remember that we should never be afraid to use the word compassion. We should never be afraid to make sure that we celebrate our immigrant heritage. That we celebrate and organize and build relationships in every single zip code of this country. Recognizing that zip code should never determine destiny. We should always recognize that our teachers are our most precious resource in our communities. And we should lift them up, not tear them down, as Matt Bevin has been doing in Kentucky. That's why he will be a one-term governor. That's why Donald Trump will be a one-term president. When we work together, call out hate, call for shared prosperity, call for an economy that works for everyone, call for racial justice. Call for justice under law. That's what the Supreme Court says. And there are no footnotes, no exclusions. Let's do it together, folks. And that's how we'll get to the mountaintop. The world needs us, not just America. I'm confident we can lead. You know, this era, and I leave you with this era is going to be studied alongside at least 4 other eras. The Know-Nothing movement of the mid-19th century, the movement that brought us the Chinese Exclusion Act in the early 20th century, the movement that brought us the internment of our Japanese American brothers and sisters, the movement known as the McCarthy era, and this movement of Trump, where the party of Lincoln died and the party of Trump came to be. And you know what all those 4 movements before us have in common? They ended. They ended because of the single most important word in a democracy. We the people came together and brought that suffragette movement about. We the people came together and eliminated the original sin of slavery, acknowledging we still have more work to do, and we see the work everywhere. And that we the people brought us all the progress that we've seen. And the we the people in the last 100 years has primarily been we the Democrats. Let's do it together, my friends. That's how we win. Okay, we're going to turn now to some nitty-gritty because we won big and we won because of you. And so now we're going to talk about how we did it. And I want to turn to my friend and colleague, La Senadora Maria Elena Durazo, State Senator from California, to introduce our next speaker.
Wow. That's our Democratic Party chairman. So proud. Sisters and brothers, I'm also proud to introduce Manuel Guzman, a first-generation Latino who lives in the small town of Reading, Pennsylvania.
Excited, huh?
Manuel is an example of how the DNC and state party investments were spent in this cycle. Funding that went directly to organizers like him. Coming out of the labor movement, there's nothing more important than recruiting, training organizers. Through DNC investments and partnership with the Pennsylvania State Party, Manny became the coordinator of Hispanic outreach in the Lehigh Valley in Pennsylvania. Manny has been a candidate, campaign manager, volunteer, and organizer, helping to elect local Democrats in his hometown. Manny, on behalf of the DNC, thank you for all you did